Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 626. Out now on Amazon Prime Video is One Fast Move, a sports drama that tells the story of a troubled young man's pursuit of becoming a professional motorcycle racer with the help of his estranged father. Starring KJ Appa, Eric Dane, and Edward James Olmos. One Fast Move is a heartfelt and thrilling story of trying to outrace the past in order to win a brighter future. And joining me now is the writer and director of One Fast Move, Mr. Kelly Blatz. Kelly, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me. By the way, episode 626. Congratulations. That's a lot of episodes, man.
I know I've been doing this for such a long time, but the pleasure that I have in doing it and is I could talk to filmmakers like yourself. And I especially
Mm,
love talking to filmmakers who come from more of a kind of like an indie world. And I know this is on Amazon Prime Video, but this is a movie for you. This is like a pursuit in its own, right? This is a passion project for you. And I know
yeah.
it's interesting that I was doing some research on you. You started riding like motorcycles around 6, 7 years ago. And that was
Hmm.
around the time you started scribbling notes for this script right around the same time. So if
Yeah.
motorcycle riding wasn't in your life as kind of like a thing that you did and it's not something that you kind of like you do in your spare time, or I guess no, motorcycle riders it isn't a spare time thing, it's like a passion thing, right? Do you think
Yeah.
that this movie would have been born? Is it the motorcycle riding that led to you wanting to write a movie like this?
No, it's a great question. I think it was a kind of a perfect synthesis at the same time. I was on one end thinking about a lot of thematic questions because coming from your mid 20s to your 30s, it's a or at least it was a big transition for me as a man. There's a lot of questions of what does it mean to be a man in the modern world? Is it to be a responsible father, family man? Is it to selfishly pursue your goals at all costs? And I was grappling with these questions, and at the same time, started riding motorcycles, and it really just changed my life in so many ways. It gave me a sense of peace and identity, and it was helping me sort of through that time. And I had gone to a couple motorcycle races locally here in LA, and I thought, gosh, this is a really interesting world. And I just started to kind of put the questions of a father's son, a lost young man looking for a father and guidance with this world of motorcycle racing. And that was right around kind of the same year that I started riding motorcycles.
When it came to the character of Wes, he's a really interesting character because when we first meet him, and I hope I'm not giving anything away because it kind of starts off he's in military prison. So we know he was in the army. We know that he's a young man who didn't know his father. His father, played by Eric Dane, left him when he was very young age. Eric Dane's the character of Dean Miller that he plays as a whole different kind of like a guy right there.
Mhm.
You're talking yourself just then about finding your way as a man in this world, and it feels like the character Wes is doing the same thing. It almost seems like him being in the army, he's seeking out his father, his pursuit of something bigger, he's trying to find a guidance or a belonging or a I don't know, or like a place where he can just find himself within a sort of like a system or a support system, but at the same time he has these self-destructive tendencies that kind of goes against it, right? When
Mhm.
character when making that character, how important was it that you wanted to show this young man trying to find a pursuit for something that he wanted to belong to? Because that's what it always seemed
Mhm.
like to me. He's looking for someone to belong to, and I don't want to give away too much of the story, but he does kind of find it, but in different avenues than he thought he would find it from his first initial thoughts on the subject.
Yeah. So, again, for me, a lot of this came from my own experience in my mid 20s, which, I was really trying to find a sense of place and belonging. I think we all need that. We all want to find something that we want to give our personal gifts to and to commit ourselves fully. And I think there was this hole in Wes because of his father's absence, that he needed to grapple and fill that hole before he could commit to something. And I think the question, and knowing that his father was out there as his motorcycle racer, I think I think he joined the army to find a sense of belonging and guidance, and I think a sense of almost a father in the army. And when he couldn't find it and got kicked out, I think he finally had the courage to go find this man who was his father And I think for me, the motorcycles was really that connection, knowing that his father was a rider. And Wes himself, I think, was a very almost like riding a wild stallion. I think he was a great rider, but I think motorcycles was always the connection to this father he imagined. And so to me, when he shows up, he has all this armor that he's put on himself throughout his life to say, I don't need a father, I just want to learn how to race. When
Mm.
underneath, to me, of course, he's seeking this man to be his father and to give him guidance and tell him, hey, you belong, your life matters, and you have talent. And so I know what it's like to try to find a mentor and to try to find somebody who validates your talents and validates your passion and who you are. So, um, that was really the North Star for me while writing this project.
I'm a big advocate of, I have two boys. So I have a son's 11 and 9. So
Mm,
I'm a big advocate that when it comes to their lives, that they have people in their lives outside of myself as
mm,
their father, especially in regards to male figures in their life, but they have a really strong support system. So when it comes to like my older son's boxing coach or choosing a godfather for my younger son or what have you, I want to make sure that the
mm,
people in their lives are people that can be really positive kind of influences to him. Wes, in the pursuit of his father, it almost seems like that he has a mythical interpretation of what his father is compared to the reality of what he's, what the character of Dean Miller is. Um,
mm,
when it comes to male role models, especially in Wes's life, when he finds his dad, it seems to me that he has kind of blinders on. He doesn't want to see his dad for who he is, and it kind of like
mm,
always he's always giving him second, third, fourth chances all the time. But
mm.
we can see it as the audience, and to me, it was almost kind of like you almost want to jump into the screen and kind of shake him to say, "Wake up," kind of
Yeah.
thing like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really it says something about sometimes the people in your lives, like for in the case of Dean to Wes, he may be his biological dad, but in regards to him being a good father figure it doesn't the scales aren't really balanced, and I think that was something that's really comes shines through. Is that something that you found as well? Maybe I don't know. I know you shadowed a lot of bike riders. Is that something that a lot of guys out there in that world kind of had as well in regards to negative and positive father figures in their lives in their journeys as riders off the court and people off the field as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both within the racing community, a lot of racers get into riding because of their fathers, so
Yeah.
many of them, because you don't start riding at 4 years old unless your father is a rider, and so a lot of these racers shared their stories with me, both in a positive and a negative way in terms of their own fathers. And, my own life and the life of my friends, I started to recognize that there is this larger issue that's going on. And I think has been going on always is, we are always looking as young men for a father figure, whether it's our biological father or not. And I think it's so important. And for Wes, I think he had idealized this image of Dean. So when he shows up, I think at first he thinks Dean's the coolest guy in the world. Here's
Mm.
this guy who I imagine, and he's out living his life. He's got a bunch of girls. He's right, And I think slowly I wanted, Wes to sort of see the and peeling the onion back of who his father is, and that his father is also a broken man who had his own issues with his own father, and is also a guy who hasn't really matured into being a responsible man. And for me, I think he does stick around and tolerate this because he desperately, desperately wants a father and his own father. And I think it's not until he really loses everything that he's gained in the film to where he has the courage to actually confront him about the abandonment. And without giving too much away, for me, it's really the character of Abel who, while he's desperately seeking his own father in Dean, is the father figure, who's empathizing with him, who's asking him how he's feeling off the track, who's giving him responsibility and is giving him wisdom. And sometimes we don't find the true father figure in our own fathers. I think the lucky ones we do. And For me, I really just wanted to explore that theme in hopes of redemption for those who have fractured relationships with their own parents.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you will love. The pursuit of a dream is a really big thing in this movie. Dean, Wes, all these guys, they are trying to find something that's bigger than them. They want to pursue something that's bigger than them. They want the fame and the riches, but it's also just getting out there and just writing. There's a really great line in a movie where you talked about the Abel characters played by Edward James Olmos when he's watching, I think it was Wes's first race, maybe it was his second race. And he's just on the sidelines and he says, 50 years later, I still love it. It's like he still
Mm,
has that kind of passion for it. Um,
mm,
I think, and I think it comes back to balance again, when sometimes with men especially, we want to pursue the things that we're passionate about. And at the same time, maybe we might have families, maybe we need to be providers and such. And there's crossroads in between the two. I've gone through it myself, where I need to be a provider, but I also want to pursue this thing where maybe the avenue I'm going down, like, writing about movies and such, may not be the most
mm,
lucrative kind of thing and stuff, but it makes me happy. So you're trying to find, the way to balance the
right.
two. And I think when it comes to the character of Dean, his pursuit for his dream has led him so astray as to what it is to be a father, that the impact that it had on like the environment around him and even himself is just something else. But for Wes, it seems to me that the dream, yeah, he wants to be a professional motorcycle rider, but I think the dream more than anything is he just wants to be whole. And I think maybe that's the way for him to do it. And I think it's a really kind of interesting balance between the two men, how, one guy where Dean's kind of almost like a Kobe Bryant Mamba mentality kind of thing, where it's like
Yeah.
it's him and nothing else, and like you eat the weak and you beat the strong and you just move on.
Yeah.
But Wes is just such a more Trey's a troubled young man, but he's a more emotionally kind of like open young man as well. And I think it's like in one way it's kind of like it creates a more fragile kind of psyche, but at the same time someone who can learn more as well. That's how I kind of get from it anyway.
No, I mean, it means so much that you recognize these themes that we were exploring in this film, because honestly, it came from that own my own transition, in my mid to late 20s. And I feel like, we're always, for me, it was that big question of, do I have to give up these things in my life, the pursuit of a family, and having children, and being that responsible family man who and a provider, to pursue my dreams, and pursue to be, am I going to be sacrificing something if I don't give everything to it? And
Mm,
for me, this film was born out of that question. And Wes is someone to me who was that lost young man that I was. He's almost like a blank slate, who is empathetic and who is conscientious, but when he shows up, he really is just looking for something to grasp onto. And there were a lot of racers who I spoke to during the shoot who said, I relate to this story so much, because here's their two kids, who are on the side and say, I have to make the decision every time I go out on the racetrack, to know that something might happen out there, and that's
mm,
something that I have to grapple with. But I can't give up my passion. And they find this balance. And for me, I met my wife while I was working on this film, and throughout writing the film and making the film, I realized that it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. You can have both. You can have the balance of a family and being a provider and responsible, while also pursuing your passion. And to me, that's what I took out of this film. And like I said, Dean represented the guy who took one way. And I think him preaching that to Wes is justifying the way he's living his life. And I think,
mm.
as an audience, I think, we recognize that it has led him to being, alone, and being a resentful man. And so yeah, I hope that answered that question. Yeah.
There's something that's really cool about One Fast movie is that authenticity is something that you really wanted to pin down, especially in regards to motorcycle culture, racing culture. I'm not a rider, but I know right my older brother is a rider. I got a best friend of mine loves it. Um, not many people do it, but those that do, and no matter, how what if we're an amateur or just weekend rider or whatever, there's a shared mutual kind of thing between them all. You see a
Mhm.
ride on the road, you give them a wave, if you don't know that,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing, right? Um, but when it comes to riding in the movies, it seems to me that people have constantly kind of missed out what it is to tap into that culture and how it's represented on screen, especially professional riding. I
Mhm.
can't think of many movies that tap into professional writing, in a feature film dramatic sense, like how One Fast Move does. How important was it for you to get the authenticity down? And in pursuit of getting that authenticity, what does that do to your story, to your screenplay? Is there things you had to change in your story the more you kind of absorb the culture, the people, the sounds, the smells, all that kind of stuff? Does that change the way the screenplay is made? Or is it just more of a logistical, technical aspects that are changed and not so much the structure of the drama of the story?
No, it absolutely informed. I first, I saw that there was a gap where I was wondering why there hadn't been a film made about a grounded film about motorcycle road racing. We've had, I can't even count how many car racing films.
Mm,
And so I said, this is a worthy pursuit, and while I was taking notes and outlining and writing, I spent a lot of time shadowing racers. I'd go to the racetrack and sort of shadow them, be in the pits with them and absorb their passions, absorb their lingo, absorb everything I could. Interviewed a lot of motorcycle racers who became consultants, and I was continually plugging that in to the story as I was writing it, and I would run it by them and say, "Hey, does anything ring false here?" Because if you're going to do a grounded motorcycle film, you know, you have to really, spend the time because I'm not a motorcycle racer, so I really had to spend the time to spend time with these people and ask them questions and constantly keep me in check. An example is, one big thing they said is, "Hey, if you get the sound of the bike wrong, we're going to turn it off." And
mm.
I mean, there were countless examples like that. So I had to make sure that the right bike sounds with the right bikes at the right time. And, you know, I had so many amazing people who kept that in check. But the authenticity was extremely important to me because, I grew to really love this community. And as a motorcyclist myself, I wanted to share that love. To me, this was a love letter, and you better make the love letter something as true as you can be. And of course, when you're telling a narrative film, there might be places where you have to stretch here and there, but nothing implausible, And we didn't want to do any CGI. We used all real racers. We recruited real racers from that area who raced on that track, and there really was a huge team effort between the stunt teams, the coordinators, and everyone involved to make sure. And it seems to have hit the mark from what I've been hearing, which just yeah, it makes me happy.
The thing with the sound of the bike, I heard you discuss that in a previous interview, and I thought to myself, that's really interesting because I never really thought of it. I've heard something, well, a bike sounds like a bike, right? Which is not the case. The person who knows knows. And to me, the way I kind of equate it in my own world is that if these accents in movies. So if I'm watching a
Mm,
movie and someone's trying to do an Australian accent and they get it wrong, well, I'm going to show, wait, well, I would have deep put in the work. An
right.
engine, a type of bike, the sound is kind of like an accent, right? It's like that's the
Absolutely.
personification of that make of where it came from and how it was built. That's kind of a way people should see it, right? So if you're
Yeah.
watching a movie and the Japanese bike sounds like a Harley Davidson, whatever, then it's gonna be off, right? So I can imagine how frustrating it would have been for so many motorcycle riders in regards to all of that. But I never thought of it that way. It's small things like that you don't think of, and but it's to a lot of
Yeah.
people in the know, it's the whole world, right? If you get that part wrong, then the whole thing's corrupted.
Yeah. That's a great analogy. I love that. The accent of the bikes. No, it's true because I mean, if you don't get the sound of the bike right, then that's the first sign that everything else is probably going to be off. And I think there's a lot of motorcycles in movies, and I think there is a disconnect between the people who are recording the bike sounds on the set and the post production, who are just pulling from libraries. And for me, I understood and knew that this film was going to be put under a great level of scrutiny by the motorcycle community, and that was a huge motivator for me to exhaust myself in every way possible to have checks and balances to get this thing right. And but yeah, I love the accent thing. I'm gonna use that now. That's great. Thank you.
Please do, please do. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really cool is how you capture speed in the movie. Thankfully, you don't do the fast cut editing kind of choppy kind of thing where a lot of people do, like they think speed is created by just doing fast images kind of thing. There's a flow,
Yeah.
there's a smoothness to it. And there's a thing about the in the movie that where Dean's characters said it's kind of like dancing. You got to get into the flow and the turns. And there were moments where I was watching it, and it was like I'm during some of the scenes, and I was kind of going like this, and for people listening, I'm kind of swerving along with the kind of like how the bikes kind of go around the tracks and such.
Yeah.
What did you find logistically had to be done to try to capture speed? Because sometimes people try to get it, they can't. In this film, though, you can actually, it feels like you are on the track because you're pursuing the bikes. You got shots from above, you got front, you got back. How do you go about kind of capturing that? What type of tech logistic stuff did you have to achieve to get that presence of this of a fast motorbike in mid race in your film?
Well, I'm glad you said that too, because I think a lot of people who've seen it say, I found myself kind of moving with the
Yeah,
track, which
absolutely.
which which was the goal. I really wanted to feel like as a viewer, you're subjectively in the race. And you know, for me, it really was that. Obviously, I'm a motorcycle rider, so I know what it's like to be on a motorcycle and to ride fast. So that was one thing. I did have that experience, but not wanting to do any CGI and not wanting to do any editing cheats. All the discussions beforehand in prep were, how can we capture the speed of a real race, and how can we make it feel like it's a real race? One, obviously, no CGI. Two, build tools and have tools that will keep up with the race bikes and shoot from every one of those tools, essentially a real race. And so, for example, drones can't keep up with bikes. What does? A helicopter. So we had to use a helicopter.
Mm.
The only thing that's going to fully keep up with a race bike is a race bike. So okay, let's find ways to rig the camera to a race, to the front, to the back, to the sides of a race bike. We built a custom race car as well as a follow and a lead vehicle. We used a Porsche Cayenne for a lot of this stuff. So it really was, let's try to build, let's work from the outside in. Let's try to build the things that we can to capture what's already there. And I think a lot of films, which is also used to great effect, they do a lot of quick cuts, like you said, cut to the speedometer and push in, and as it's revving up. And for us, it was like, I don't mind the idiosyncrasies of a shaky camera. I don't mind letting things sit and to really feel like you're on the back of this bike. And and I had a great team doing that. Greg Smers, who did all the Mission Impossible stuff with Tom Cruise, he was a second unit director. We had a lot of great team come together to capture that. And really, once I saw the footage, I just leaned into that. I said, let's not use a bunch of quick cuts, and for me too, it was also really important to continue to check into the subjectivity of the characters, and to keep checking in with them, or else it'll feel like, you're purely in a video game. I didn't want to lose the narrative. So again, a great team who built great tools to capture that speed.
This was shot in Atlanta, in the summer of Atlanta, which from all accounts gets very hot. But
Yeah.
when things get very hot, there can also be a lot of wet weather in there as well. How hard was it to shoot around that? Because number one, you got everyone in levers and really hot days, but I'm sure like having wet tracks and such, that would have been a real pain in the ass as well, most of the time during filming of this, right?
Oh, absolutely. That was one thing that I didn't foresee. We had to the weather was like another character in this film. Um, Obviously Georgia's wet in the summer, and you can't. It's unsafe to race and ride on wet tracks, and also the continuity of it. So,
Hmm.
and you're wearing leathers as well. So we really tried to first keep the riders safe was the first priority, right? Which is keeping them cool, keeping them hydrated, and also not shooting on an unsafe wet track. So a lot of days we were sitting for 3 hours waiting for the rain and for the track to dry out. So it really was working around. But again, I think everything happens as it should. And that gave the time that we were shooting a certain amount of intensity and focus. And it also, some of that downtime in between created a good amount of camaraderie between the crew and the racers to get to know each other and trust each other, which is important when you're flying around at 180 miles an hour on a track with a camera in between you. So for me, I just really, you have to surrender to that process. And luckily we were able to get everything we needed.
It's quite amazing in the last, probably even last decade, how Georgia in Atlanta has really become a kind of like a hub of production now for film and TV. Everything from the biggest MCU kind of things to independent films and what
Yeah.
have you. You've been in the game for a long time, both as a filmmaker, as an actor. How would you, if I said that Georgia was the new Hollywood, is that something that has validity, or is Hollywood still Hollywood no matter how much production costs and tax and everything else in California is compared to Georgia? Because it just seems to me that more people I talk to, the
Mm.
less times they're actually filming in LA. They're filming either in Georgia. They may be, sometimes if they're doing like a war thing, they might go overseas to like Romania or something, or sometimes
Yeah.
they might
Yeah.
even come here to Queensland, like in Australia and such. It just seems
Yeah.
that the hub that was once the Dream Factory in LA has been kind
Mhm.
of like gone everywhere else. I'm just curious on your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in this industry since 2006, so I've seen a lot of that transition. Honestly, I think what Hollywood in its roots was really built on was the totality of it, which was the crew, the builders, all of the talented craftspeople and that goes into making a film. And all those people I think used to live in LA, work in LA, befriend each other, raise families together. So in terms of that, Atlanta, when I was there, it felt that way. The
Mm,
crews are there. That feeling of camaraderie, of really the people who are in it, in the trenches, behind the scenes. All the craftspeople are working there, and the production level that was going on during that summer in Atlanta it's insane. All the Marvel movies and TV shows, and you really felt it, that buzz in Atlanta and excitement of creativity. Whereas in Hollywood now, um, like you said, it's very rare that I see. I used to see productions and Star Wagons all over the place while you're driving by. It's really non-existent. I mean, it's very few and far between, except for shooting sitcoms on stages,
mm,
which is just, I guess, the evolution, and maybe it'll come back. But what you do feel in Hollywood is still that the origins of a lot of these projects start the ideas, really start here in LA, and then are sent off to battle, sent off into the trenches. It really feels that way. So maybe that's the way it's going to head. It's become much more globalized, and I love that it's bringing work and bringing film all over the world into different states. I do love the aspect that it's not just centralized here in Los Angeles, but I wouldn't want to lose it entirely here. You know,
so kind of like LA is kind of like the mothership, right? And then they got like everything
yeah,
else is dispersed, right?
it
Okay, yeah,
feels that way. Yeah,
yeah.
for at least for American cinema, yeah, it feels that way.
Um, so this film's been with you for such a long time. You were writing the script for over 3 years, but the idea's been with you for like maybe 6 or 7 years. It's out now. It's on Amazon Prime. How do you feel about when you're with a project for this long and then letting it go? Because I always love this talking this subject with filmmakers, because some filmmakers, they're like, oh, still to this day, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that, like perfectionist kind of mindset. Other filmmakers are like, it's done, it's out there, ready to move on to the next thing. What's your thought process and feelings are like now that one fast move? he's done. People are watching it. How do you feel about now that it's out there, and people are giving it a good watch and commenting on it and talking about it? What's your thought process?
I think much more towards the latter, which to me, and I don't have children yet, so forgive the analogy, but because I'm not saying it's exactly like this at all, but for me, it does feel like something you're raising in a lot of ways. I mean, especially when it's 5 or 6 years, that's about the time it goes, kids go to school or kindergarten. You got to kind of, set them free into the world to be picked on or bullied or praised or all of the things that the world is. I mean, that's what life is exposing yourself to everything. And you know, for me, I do one thing that I can really sit solid in this is that me and the team turned over every single stone we possibly could. We had the luxury of having the time to spend. I mean, we were in the edit for over a year. There wasn't one thing we didn't try. There was nothing that felt rushed. Um, and I'm a huge believer in that, you can't fight against what is. And you have a vision when you come in, for me, and also being open to what is actually happening while you're shooting. And same with the edit. It's like I'm listening to the film as you're also, crafting that vision. And I'm not so much a perfectionist where it's a control thing, but more I'm really wanting to contribute the best thing I possibly can to the world. And I feel that responsibility when you do have the luxury and the privilege of making a film. And so for me, I didn't know it was going to be on such a big scale in terms of even Amazon, releasing it globally to the world. I didn't know that going in, and I'm so grateful that the film is being seen on that level. But for me, I feel like I'm just setting my child off into the world, and your hope is that it affects the people and moves the people that it needs to, and that and I trust that. And so it's a joy. It's a joyous feeling for sure.
So for everyone out there right now, Amazon Prime Video, one fast movie. Really recommend people check out this film because I loved it. I like the themes in the film. I love the how you managed to get the technical aspects of the writing scenes with the heart of the story, because sometimes it's really hard to find that balance between the two things in like a whether it be a racing movie or whether it be car racing, what have you. It's hard to get the balance between the two, and I think what you've done, Kelly, is you got that balance right between the two. And above everything else, I think it's a really kind of beneficial movie for men and young men to watch, because it shows a journey, and it shows excuse me, a pursuit, and it shows a striving for trying to achieve something greater than oneself, both on and off the racetrack. And I think that's a really kind of great lesson for people to take on and learn. I love the really grounded kind of approach, a character-driven approach to it as well. So for everyone out there, one fast move, Amazon Prime Video. This is really a movie. Watch with your mates. So what have you, sit down, have some, get some popcorn, and strap yourself in for the ride, both emotionally and also the physical sense as well, because this is a movie that's going to make you sway. It's going to make you turn. It's going to, it's going to make you feel like, getting on your own bike. I don't have a bike, but I wanted to get a bike after watching it. But that's all right. It's a great work you've done here, Kelly. And thank you so much for your time, and congrats with the movie. It's much appreciated.
Matthew, thank you so much. First, I'm always grateful for people to take the hour and 45 out of their life to watch a film. But it really seemed that you saw and understood the themes we were wrestling with, and we did really want to achieve that balance between something that is exciting and authentic in the action aspect of the racing, but also grounded in its character, themes, and development. So I really appreciate the words and you having me on, and I hope that I have the privilege of doing this again with you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.